everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you've been looking for a tutorial for a checkered chunky knit blanket for your child or perhaps someone else's child as a gift, look no further, this tutorial is for you. It is beginner friendly, step-by-step how to make this gorgeous blanket. This blanket will measure 30 inches by 50 inches, which is the most ideal size for a child. Without further ado, let's get into the tutorial. For materials needed, you're going to need 4 skeins of Bernat Blanket Big, one of each color. This one here is vintage and this is chalk pink. You'll also need a pair of scissors, a lighter, and a measuring tape. Our very first step is laying out our colors. I'd like my first row of checkers to be pink, white, pink. So that's the way I have mine laid out. And now we'll get started on our foundation chain. Using your first color, you're going to make 8 loops. So we'll start with a slip knot. If you need help making a slip knot, I have a video tutorial on that, which will be linked above. So we want our slip knot to be approximately 3 finger widths in size. Mine is a little bit tight, so I'm going to make it larger so that I can fit 3 fingers through. Remember that this slip knot counts as our first loop, so we need to do 7 more approximately the same size.
A new place, a new home, for a while, let me feel alive.
We've got the first segment of our starting chain complete. I'm just going to double check that this is in fact 8 loops. And I'm going to take my measuring tape as well and make sure that it ended up the measurement I want. I just want it around 10 inches. You can see it's about 9.5 right now. I want the blanket to be 30 inches in width, and I find my starting chain tends to stretch out just a tiny bit as I go, so 9.5 inches there is perfect. Let's move to our second color, which for me is white. We're going to attach the white to the pink and then make 8 loops in this second color. So to attach them, I'm just going to take the end of my yarn here, loop it through as if I was continuing my chain. So this counts as my first loop of white, and then we will make 7 more, so we have a total of 8.
Nothing to hold me back, take my time, just enjoy the ride. I know man passing by, life is good.
We're all finished the white segment, and I've already double checked that this is 8 loops, so we are on track. I'm leaving a little bit of a tail here, which we're going to weave together at the ends. For now, we don't need to worry about it, just need enough to be able to weave in our ends later. So let's move on to square number 3, which is the pink color again. And we'll do the same thing where we leave a bit of a tail and attach our pink, just as if we're continuing the chain like usual. So I'll add an extra 7 loops here, so I have a total of 8 in my third pink segment. We're all finished row 1, and I've double checked here that I have a total of 24 loops. We want 8 in each segment, so make sure you double check your numbers before we move on to row 2. For row 2, we're going to be pulling loops up into this pink segment. So we will start at the very end in this last loop, and we will insert our yarn and pull up to make a loop at the very end. And then in the top of each of these loops, we're going to be pulling up our second row of loops. Now that we're on row 2, we need to remember that our loops are going to be a little bit smaller. We always make the foundation chain loops larger, about 3 fingers, and for the rest of the blanket, we're going to be doing 2 fingers in size. So let's pull up loops in the rest of this segment. We're going to be doing 7 more in the tops of our existing loops. I feel so alive as I reach out to Row 2 is completed in this first segment, and now it's time to move on to white, but we have to do something very critical before we start making loops in our white. We're going to cross our colors over each other to secure them at this point. This is critical to make sure that your checkered blanket actually works. If you just keep going with each color without crossing them over each other, you're going to end up with gaping holes in your blanket. Let's get our colors crossed and connected. What we're going to do is take the color on the right, for me that's pink, and cross it over top of the color on the left, which is the white one. Then we're left here with a little crisscross at the bottom. We're going to pull that tight, and then we will be crossing the white, the color on the right, over top of pink, the color on the left, to make another cross. So we're going to pull the little crisscross at the bottom tight, and that's going to secure our colors into place. We're ready to get started on our white loops, and this little part here can be tricky. We're going to be making our first loop in here, this kind of remnant of a white loop, and it's helpful to hold your crisscross tight while you make your first loop. So we're going in this space here, grabbing our white yarn to pull up a loop that's 2 finger widths in size. Then we'll pull up another 7 loops to make a total of 8 loops for this segment in row 2.
I found my way, I found my way. I was in the dark against it all, but made it through the day, 'cause I found my way.
Now it's time to do another crisscross with our colors before we start on to our pink. So we're taking the color on the right over top of the left, pulling tight. Then the color on the right over top of left to get it back to its original position. And we will pull this crisscross tight down here, which has our colors connected. And then we'll be working into the tops of these loops to finish off row 2.
In bad times, I know I'll be okay, 'cause I found my way.
We're all finished row 2, so to move on to row 3, we're now going to do the same thing, 8 loops in this pink section, and then we'll do a crisscross here, and I will meet you at this point to review the crisscross again. All right, for our crisscross of colors, we're going to take the right over the left and the right over the left to put it back to its original position and now have a crisscross. So we'll pull it tight down here and then start into this white section. Remember to keep this crisscross tight as you start into your next color. Let's finish this row off by completing 7 more loops in the white section, doing a crisscross here, and 8 more loops in our final pink section.
I was in the dark against it all, but made it through the day, 'cause I found my way. I found my way. In bad times, I know I'll be okay.
To finish off this big section of pink, white, pink, we're going to keep doing the exact same thing that we've been doing, where we complete 8 loops, do a crisscross, 8 loops, crisscross, and 8 loops. We're going to do that back and forth until we get our desired square size. I'm not exactly sure how many rows we're going to need yet. So what I'm doing is keeping a measuring tape close by, and when I get to the point that my square is 10 by 10, I will stop, and that will be the completion of my first set of squares.
it all, but made it through the day, 'cause I found my way. I found my way. In bad times, I know I'll be okay, 'cause I found my way. A new place, a new home for a while. Let me feel.
I've just completed my first set of checkers, and this ended up being 12 rows. So going forward, I'll note that every square will be 12 rows in order to get a 10 by 10 square. Now at this point, we're going to change colors so that our next set of checkers go white, pink, white. So let's start over here. This is where I completed my last row, and I would like the next row to start as white. What we'll do to change colors is mark with our thumb and first finger the point that we have finished this last pink loop and where we want the white to begin. I'm pinching just behind where I've completed this loop, and what I'm going to do is pull it out and cut at this point. Now with my next color, which is white, I'm going to find the end of it, and on both pieces of yarn, I'm going to push the fluffy bits away so that I can find the little plastic cord in the middle. Let's look at this one. I'm pushing the fluffy bits away, and you can just kind of see there's a little piece of plastic in the middle. So what we're going to do is burn them together like this, and the plastic in the middle will melt together and create a strong hold. So take your lighter, light one end, and attach it to the other. You want to hold it together for a little bit while it cools down. Just be careful not to touch it right away because it will be quite warm. Then after a little bit, you can kind of go ahead and feel that the two cords have connected together. It'll feel like a little bit of a lump at the point where the colors meet, and that way you know that it's nice and strong. So give it a little tug just to test that it's not going to rip on you. And we are ready to get started on our white row. So let's put this loop back into place. We already know it's the perfect fit because we cut it exactly at the right point. So we now have a very seamless connection, and we can start our white row. Just as we've been doing, let's do 8 loops of this white row, and I'll meet you at this point for our next color change.
Nothing to hold me back, take my time, just enjoy the ride.
At this point, I've got 2 whites side by side, which can be a little bit confusing. You want to make sure that you do not touch this one that you've just attached. You're going to keep it over to the side. We are working with this white square and the yarn that is attached to this middle white square. So we're going to do the same thing where we take the point that we want the white to transition into pink and mark it with our thumb and first finger. In this case, you don't want to pull the loop completely out because we've got crisscrosses going on here, and that's going to completely pull it out. So mark the point and just pull very slightly so that this loop is a little bit smaller and you have some space to work with. You're going to take your scissors and cut at that point. And then we're going to do the same thing we just did, where we take our new yarn and expose the little plastic cord in the middle, and then we will be attaching it to this little piece down here. So go ahead and light the one end and attach to your white piece down here. After letting it cool down and kind of smushing those cords together, we'll just do a little tug test again, make sure it's strong. And we're going to pull this little loop back into place. It's a little bit tough, so just be careful to not rip your blanket, but just slowly kind of coax it back into place. And we're just about ready to start on our pink color, but remember, first we have to crisscross our colors, where we go right over left and left over right back into place to make that cross at the bottom, which is going to keep our colors securely attached. So now let's go ahead and do our 8 loops of pink, and I'll see you right here for the next color change.
Best I've ever felt. Get me up, somewhere new, somewhere I.
Okay, we're now at our spot for the final color change of this section. Remember, we're not cutting this pink that we just attached. We're cutting the existing pink that we had over here. So let's take this spot again where we want the pink to turn into white. Mark it with your thumb and finger and very gently pull so you have a little bit more room to work with. Then we'll cut that spot and move our pink away for now. We'll grab the white and expose the plastic cord in the middle and then light it and attach. So once it's cooled down, make sure to give it a little tug to see that it's secure and pull that pink loop back into position. And then we'll do our crisscross here. Take the white over the pink and the pink back over the white. And with our crisscross down here, we will pull that tight. And now we can start into the white on this final square.
Oh, I feel so alive.
So now that we have our new colors attached, we're ready to continue on and complete the next set of checkers. Let's remember that we're doing 12 rows per square. So we've already got the first one completed. We need to do an additional 11 to get our square. And we're going to be doing the exact same method we've been doing, where we do 8 loops, crisscross here, 8 loops, crisscross here, and 8 loops. All right, we have 2 sections of our checkers done. Let's go over a color change together one more time. So we're going to be switching this block from white to pink, which means we will pinch the spot where we want the white to turn into pink and pull out and then cut at this point. Let's get our pink yarn and push away the fluff so we can find the plastic cord in the middle, then light it and attach. We'll bring our white back into place. And then we'll go ahead with our segment of pink right here.
As I reach out, reach out, reach out, reach out to the sky, I found my way.
Now let's change this block into white. We're going to cut at the point we want the pink to turn into white. So pinch it here and just pull out a little bit. Pull your pink back into place. Let's do our crisscross here before we continue into our white. We're going to take the white that we just attached over the pink and then the pink back over the white. And then don't forget to tighten your cross here and you're ready to start into your white. All right, and our last color change for this section, we're turning this block into pink. So let's grab this white here, mark where you want it to turn into pink, and just pull very slightly to give yourself some extra room and cut.
I was in the dark against it all, but made it through the day, 'cause I found my way. I found my way. In bad times, I know I'll be okay, 'cause I found my way.
So at this point, it's just a matter of repeating these same patterns until you get to your desired length. I'm doing my blanket 3 checkers by 5 checkers. So I'm going to finish off the rest of my sections and I'll meet you at the very end where we can close the blanket off together. Okay, we're almost done. Let me just pick you up and show you what we're looking like. We've got 3 squares by 5 squares and almost finished the top row. So we'll just roll it up and get working on our closing row at the top here, which will be row 12 of this set of checkers. To close off, we're going to work into the loops like we normally would, but this time we're going to make our loops a little bit bigger like we did at the start of our blanket in that very first row. So we're going to work into this end loop here and pull up a loop as usual, but now it's a little bit bigger. We're looking for that 3 finger width size where these ones were 2. So pull up a large loop, and then in the second hole, pull up another large loop of the same size, 3 fingers, and we're going to take this first loop and put it over top of the second loop. Let's do that again in the next space. So we have this loop here. Then in this third space, we're going to make a loop 3 fingers in size. Then we're going to take this first loop and go over top of the second one. So we will keep doing that for this section, and then I'll show you what happens here when these 2 colors merge.
'Cause I found my way. 'Cause I found my way, my way, my way, my way, my way. 'Cause I found my way.
We're all done our little pink section here, and you can see we have 1 loop left in the pink area. So to go from pink to white, we're going to make a 3 finger loop in the white and take this first pink loop and go over top of the white just like you normally would. Now we can continue on with the white. We'll make a 3 finger loop here, and now this white loop will go over the second white loop. So let's continue this same process all along the top of our blanket, and I'll meet you at the very end to tie off.
My way, my way, my way, my way. I found my way, I found my way. I was in the dark against it all.
We're here at our very last loop, so let's put our final 3 finger loop in and bring the first loop over top. Then to close it off, we're simply going to tie a knot in the top. So cut a tail on this piece of yarn here, and we'll tie a knot in the top. You want to leave enough length in the tail to weave in the ends in a minute after we finish this knot. Okay, let's tie in all our ends. We do have quite a few because of all the color changes, but we'll start at this one. All you're going to do is take your end and weave it through the side of your blanket. So just pull this tail through, find another spot, weave that in. Just doing that a couple times until it feels nice and secured. And up to you, you can either just trim it at whatever point you're happy with, or you can trim a little extra and burn it onto the side. That's generally what I like to do just to keep things nice and secure. So we'll trim, and then we will light this little nub of yarn, and then we're just gonna stick it right to the side. Then you're left with a pretty seamless edge. You can't even really tell where you have weaved in your ends. Now let's go ahead and do the same thing here with this piece. We'll cut off a little tail and weave it in. So it's up to you. You can weave up at the top here, or you can weave down the back or up this way. It's really whichever way works best for you. Fortunately, it's very forgiving. So I'm going to weave along the back.
'Cause I found my way, I found my way. In bad times.
Let's go ahead and do this last one up here, and then you should have 3 at the bottom.
I'll be okay, 'cause I found my way.
And there we have it. Our checkered chunky knit blanket is complete. If you're interested in an adult size checkered chunky knit blanket, check out the tutorial that's linked on the left-hand side of the screen. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know in the comments the colors that you made for your blanket.